the GMAT gets that reputation of being the harder test. All right, last GMAT myth. The GMAT is harder than the GRE. I know I've heard this one. Have you heard this one, Eric?
All the time. So, yeah.
All right, Eric, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think it right there you go, right? It's all about an individual's strengths and weaknesses, right? So, the GMAT is really, the gold standard, when you're applying to business school, right? It's the one was created by, a group of schools, a group of deans that got together, 70 years or so ago and said, we want an exam that really fits, business schools. And so it was developed from there, and it always has been. It's always focused on what people are going to be exposed to when they get to business school. So obviously the quant is probably going to be a little bit more challenging, right, than, other assessments that are out there. But again, if your strengths are on the quant part, you probably think GMAT's a little bit easier, right? If it's, if your verbal isn't quite as strong, you might think the GMAT is harder, or the GRE is harder. I mean, so it really depends on each individual. But what's been your experience, Erica?
Absolutely. I'm with you that it really does depend. I think that the GMAT gets that reputation of being the harder test, partially because that quant section is so competitive. But also because of the adaptive nature of the exam. I think that, students are going into, the GMAT versus the GRE, and maybe they have literally the same percentile on both exams, but they might feel a little bit like, oh, I didn't do as well on the GMAT because I missed half of the questions, whereas on the GRE, maybe I only missed a few. Whereas it's the same performance. So I think it comes down to maybe a misunderstanding of how that test is structured. So what I recommend to students is first, talk to your schools, talk to admissions committees, call the admissions office, see if your school does have a preference for the GMAT or the GRE, or if, any scholarships you're looking at have a preference. Make sure that the test you're taking fits your goals, right? It's not great to take an exam that doesn't match your goals. And then once you have that, if you go, okay, I really can take either exam, there are some things that I recommend as guidelines. If you're a bit of a perfectionist, maybe that GMAT algorithm might give you a little bit of grief, but I'm living proof you can get over it. If you struggle a little bit more with quant, GRE might be a better bet. If you maybe struggle more with like vocab or English, then maybe you might aim for GMAT. But my big recommendation is take a practice test. If you have time, take a GMAT practice test one weekend, take a GRE practice test another weekend. Don't try to take them back to back. It's not going to work well. And then compare your percentiles and then choose the one you're performing better at and invest your attention there. I see that a lot of students try to do both exams. I do not recommend that because that's splitting your attention and likely splitting your score improvement. They don't want to see a slight improvement on both exams. They'd rather see a big improvement on one exam.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I will say probably you're going to find more schools now that say we're agnostic, right? So, but I think your point about the scholarship part is an important one. It also has an impact on which industries you're looking to go into, right? So sometimes some of the like consulting and finance, investment banking, things like that, they will ask for your GMAT score. That's what they're used to. Now that may change over time as more candidates take a GRE going to business school, but you got to factor that in a little bit. But I have and I very much believe this, but it's not just because I work for GMAT, but I've heard this from a lot of, test prep folks like Erica and all the great work that they do, is that if you're looking to go to business school, the GMAT is the thing that it's the kinds of things you have to prepare for to take the GMAT are going to better prepare you for business school, right? Than the GRE, right? So just a little bit there, again, looking at this as an investment of your time. And, in a way, it does kind of tell the school, look, I'm really serious about business school, right? So, this is the test that, the vast majority of people are taking to get into business school. Now, that may change over time, right? But there's still that signal of, are you really sure you're committed to going to business school? Right. And so, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
there's some other thoughts there. But yeah, it all comes down to your strengths and weaknesses in the end, right? And what your comfort level is with things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So appreciate your perspective, Eric.
Yeah.